So how shocking for you guys was it when Washington came out and ran the table again on Monday night against the Seahawks? What were y'all thinking?
I was honestly a little surprised, not about Washington. I thought that game would, their offense would function, especially against Seattle's defense. I was more so surprised how bad Russell Wilson looked. Like, he just looked terrible. And also, what is up with him and DK Metcalf? Like,
Bad.
The 2 targets, like, how are you not going to target Metcalf? But
Great
only
fighting.
twice. I have a theory on that, but I'm going to get into that after the show. But
Was it the whole celibacy thing?
kind of, yeah. Well, yeah. We all know the narrative about like Russell Wilson and how he was supposedly celibate until he got married. And then this OnlyFans model bust out DK on social media saying that he had disinvited her to go bang because, quote, 5 was too much. Like, okay. I think that has to play into it. Like, and of course, like, I love mess and I'm a drama queen. So
is it though? Like, is that really a thing? Like,
maybe it is.
It happened in week 3, right? So the whole storyline behind it is it happened in week 3, and ever since week 3, he's been pretty much like, exiled from receiving a significant amount of targets.
Well, it became public like in October, but then Geno was the quarterback. So I think when Russ got back, he was rehabbing, right? He had time to sit around and stew while he was not practicing, and he got to read all that shit. Maybe that's how he rehabbed his thumb.
Oh God!
Or rehabbed his finger, was scrolling through social media.
Oh my God! All right, let's go into the show on that one.
Oh God.
This is Fantasy Intervention. Now here to intervene with your fantasy life, Chase Vernon.
Welcome on in, everybody, to another episode of Fantasy Intervention. Oh, we are here. We are stoked about Week 13 and the waiver wires. We brought a guest with us. So first off, let me introduce my co-host. Of course, it's Brit Flynn. Let me actually switch up here, Britt. We got Brit Flynn in the show with us tonight, as we do every single Tuesday. You can find her at Brit_Flynn over there on Twitter. What's going on, Brit? How you doing?
Oh, I'm so good. Except for these allergies. If you guys see me like dabbing my eye won't stop watering. So, but everything's cool. I'm ready to talk about waivers because this week's juicy.
All right. And then we have, of course, Steve. What's up, Steve? How you doing, man?
What's going on, Chase? Glad to be back again. I was only here a couple of days ago, but now we have to do something different besides starting sets. So I'm excited to talk some waivers tonight.
Yeah, man, this is interesting because Week 13, there are so many different directions people are going, right? Like, I've seen like the starter sits, and I write my article over there. If you guys want to find it over there at trophysmack.com, go to the Smack Zone, and all I do is I talk shit about people's waiver wire suggestions. I mean, I don't call anybody out in particular, but I mean, I have to sit there and trash some of these waiver wire pickups because some of them are so absurd. And so we decided to, kind of bring this into the discussion on Tuesday nights. And we started out with, some obvious pickups. Guys, we're not going to spend a ton of time on, obviously you're going to go after them, like Alexander Madison. I don't want to get too far ahead on the show sheet, but Alexander Madison's probably on there. Meanwhile, we trash these other players who are like, we don't want anything to do with them. And then we finish it up with some gems or some late rounders that people might not be thinking about, but you might be able to get a little bit of a head start in terms of trying to pick them up before the waivers, or before other people go after them in a week ahead of time on waivers. So let's go ahead and start this show off. And I want to start this off with a message from Hunter Hall. If you guys have any questions, by the way, get them in the chat. We want to see them. We want to try and answer your questions. So if you have any questions, please bring them in the chat. Start or sit is for tomorrow night. However, we are talking waivers. So anything waiver related, bring it in here for us. But Hunter over there said his team named Gutter Hose. I was last in 12th and 6th with the same record as 7 and 10. And I placed 7th and 8th over the next 2 games, must-win games. I'll be back tomorrow for start or sit, of course. I'll see you tomorrow, Hunter, and you're welcome for the advice. All right, and then, oh, man, we actually have a bunch of stuff coming in from him. All right, Hunter, before we get to all your questions, all right, I'm going to get to your next ones, your suggestions over here. I want to start it out with a couple of the obvious pickups because like we talked about, I mean, Alexander Madison is an obvious one to go to, but Britt, we're going to start out with you in the quarterback position. I mean, what's your first no shit? You should obviously put them on your rosters right off the bat. Pickup of the week.
My first one is Taysom Hill. We were kind of on him when he came back from the concussion, whenever Jameis went out with the ACL, whenever Trevor Siemian came in. They're just now telling us this week that there was supposedly a foot issue that he's been battling through. Nobody's really said anything about that. I think if we would have known that, he wouldn't have been on the no shit when he was. But it looks like he's battled through that. Ian Rappaport reported Monday that Taysom Hill should start on Thursday against Dallas. I love Dallas. Y'all all know that, but they're not the best in allowing deep plays, especially from the quarterbacks. And Hill's averaged 208.5 passing yards and 52.5 rushing yards while putting up 4 passing and 4 rushing touchdowns over 4 games in 2020. He also has a really favorable upcoming schedule versus Dallas, at the Jets, at Tampa, and then versus Miami. So if you're looking for a quarterback streamer who you can kind of hold on to and help you either make a playoff push or possibly get you a playoff bye or even win you your first playoff game, Taysom is definitely in that tier for me.
Yeah, I mean, when we look at the Cowboys and how they performed up against wide receivers, it's been somewhat decent. However, like you just brought up, I mean, they're allowing an 11% explosive pass play rate, which is 29th ranked in the NFL. They've allowed 420 plays to go over 20 yards in the passing game thus far in the season, which is absolutely tremendous. I mean, we're talking about a team that can get beat deep, and what do the Saints try and play? They try and play the deep ball. We talk about Traquan Smith. We talk about Marquez Callaway. I mean, these are both options in the deep game. So, Steve, how are you feeling on Taysom Hill? Is he a no-shit pickup for you, or are you definitely picking him up and playing him? Are you a little bit hesitant on this one? And is there another quarterback that you might have in mind?
Yeah, no, Britt, no offense. I'm a little hesitant on it, honestly. I like Taysom Hill, and we saw what he was able to do last year for us in fantasy, and it was spectacular, especially for fantasy. But his injury with his foot definitely keeps me somewhat concerned. I know the matchup's great, and if he's a full go, I think he's a good pickup. But God forbid something happens to him during that game. Does that foot injury stop him from getting that rushing floor that we kind of really like in Taysom Hill? That's like my only concern about it, is that rushing ability that we all love in him. That's my big concern. I don't know what you guys do. Do you guys do like over 40, under 40%? What do you guys do for ownership? I forgot to ask you guys before the show.
We're talking about 40, 50%, somewhere in there. I mean, up to 60. We want it to be available on most people's waivers. So if we're sitting there and thinking that, oh wait, this guy probably isn't on a ton of waivers because he's going to end up getting picked up before then, it's a little bit different story. But yeah, I mean, we're looking at 40, 50% or so.
All right. So like I said, I don't want to be biased because I'm a Dolphins fan behind me here, but Tua was around 40% last time I looked on Monday night, and he has a matchup against the Giants this week. Giants have been kind of so-so this season against quarterbacks, but Tua has been able to perform against poor teams this season here, and he seems to be just getting better and better as he's been rehabbing, or not rehabbing, but healing from that injury he had early on this season. And then he has a bye week, so it kind of screws you for week 14 if you needed him for week 14. But if you can hold on to him, he's got the Jets, he's got the Saints, who you can throw on the Saints, and then he's got the Titans, who you can also throw on this season as well. So his receivers are hopefully going to be coming back and healthy, hopefully following the bye week. And if you're looking for a quarterback for the now, and hopefully if you're making the playoffs, I think he's a pretty good guy to have on your team right now.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to pick between the two, I'm probably going to lean Tua in this one just to see what happens with Taysom Hill moving forward. He was great. Don't get me wrong, like he was great coming out last year, killed it in the few games that he started. While Drew Brees was hurt, he kind of tapered off towards the tail end. I'm a little bit concerned that could actually, result in something moving forward. But I still like Taysom Hill, and I think that Tua Tagovailoa are both great options in this one. I think they're both no-shit pickups for me. If I had to pick between the two, I'm going Tua, especially with the way that Jalen Waddle's playing. And I don't know if you said this or not, Steve. Did you mention Devontae Parker's potentially coming back?
Yeah, him and Will Fuller hopefully will be back following their bye week, so that would be even more weapons for Tua down the line.
Yeah, but obviously, if you need somebody this week, that doesn't help you out. So let's go ahead and hop on to this next one. I believe it's at the running back position. We mentioned Alexander Mattison. I don't think we need to talk too much about that. They have a very advantageous schedule moving forward. Let's go on to Jamal Williams, because Jamal Williams is in a little bit of an interesting situation. He comes back from injury, and now you have Jamar Jefferson, who's taking a role in the receiving game. I really haven't practiced Godwin's last name yet, so I'm not even going to attempt it as of right now.
Igwe
Buke. Okay. She's the champ over there. She's the champ. They've taken on an increased role, and I don't think that they're going to cut into his workload that much. But is he going to see over 60% snap share? And that's where I'm like, okay, I don't know if he actually gets to 60 or 70%. So, Britt, what are you thinking over there with Jamal Williams?
So I really think that he does. He also has that passing upside that DeAndre Swift had last week when Swift went out, albeit he did go out fairly early. But Jamal Williams was in the game even before Swift got hurt. He still ran 63% of the snaps. They had Godwin in at 8%. They had Jamar Jefferson in at 10%. So I think that going forward, I mean, Williams is going to be the clear-cut first down back and multi-down back. And then they're just going to kind of sprinkle in Jefferson and Igwe Buke as they can. I mean, Williams wasn't hyper efficient against the Bears, but he got 5 receptions. And when you're doing PPR, I mean, that's just so valuable with a running back. So, I mean, depending on, he's rostered in 46.5%, 41 of ESPN, 41% Yahoo. So he might not even be available, but if he is, I'm definitely making a pull for him in a couple leagues, whether to try to block other people or to just get him for myself because I have Swift.
Yeah, I mean, if you have Swift and you're stuck on running back position, I don't feel like he's a bad option to pivot off to. I mean, he saw production earlier on in the year. Steven, how you feeling about this one?
Yeah, I'm loving Jamal Williams this week, honestly. I think if you're looking for a running back for this week, I think he's a clear-cut option, one of the top 3 options for you this week. And again, there could be a situation where, DeAndre Swift, maybe they want to just shut him down or take their time to bring him back, because why rush a young talent when the team is just not performing? Maybe Dan Campbell doesn't want to do that. Maybe he likes to throw his guys in there, let them tough it out. But you're getting Jamal Williams for this week alone. You have the Minnesota Vikings. They're playing this week. They're kind of below average for running backs this season. And you're getting a guy who's probably going to see what you saw this past week, 15 carries, 5 targets in this game here. You're looking for similar production out of him, and maybe more if the Vikings happen to get an early lead on the Lions.
Yeah, see, this is where I'm concerned, all right? So I'm looking at the routes run over there at PFF, and we saw 20 in the first week when he went off for the routes run, right? Then we go down, he only runs 12 routes. Then he only runs 13 routes. Then he only runs 5 and 6 routes. Week 6, 10, week 7, 4. And then he comes back from injury in week 11, runs 4 routes. And then he gets 14 last week. And that's obviously because they didn't have, a game plan set up for Jamar Jefferson or for Godwin. And it's sitting there looking like Jamal Williams, although he could end up taking on a massive role. I'm a little bit nervous that they end up putting in Jamar Jefferson in the third down role to actually get those points in the receiving game. And I mean, Jamal Williams last week, he had 6.8 points in the receiving game alone. So that's obviously a big portion of his production. And although I'm still going to go after him and I'm still going to, roll him out, obviously with the matchup and everything, I'm still a little bit hesitant when it comes to throwing down the rest of my fab, because we're getting down to the nitty gritty. We're getting down to the last little bit. Do you really want to throw the remaining aspect of your fab at a guy who might end up having a decreased role in the passing game? And that's where I'm a little bit hesitant. But I mean, if you can't get Alexander Mattison, if he's out of your price range, you might want to pivot off to him. So
yeah, I think the fab, what I've looked at is like Madison, they're recommending spending 50% of your remaining fab. And then with Williams, like 10 to 11%. So he's definitely a cheaper option if you are low on fab dollars.
All right. I'll take it. I'd rather go after a guy like Chuba Hubbard, to be honest with you. So, I mean, we might actually have this in a little bit of a different section, but Chuba Hubbard is somebody for me that I actually want to tackle. And I know, Britt, that you don't like this take, and we're probably going to talk a little bit about it more here in a second. But Chuba Hubbard, for me, was somebody that I actually loved moving forward. I think that he's somebody that can progressively move your team towards the fantasy championships. I don't think that they're going to allow Cam Newton to pass a whole ton. And when he does pass, he's not going to be checking down to the running backs as much. However, what he does offer is a rushing upside, which increases the efficiency for the running backs. You know, we're talking about the Alfred Morris corollary, as the Podfather, quote unquote, termed it. So, you know, it's something as to where when you have a rushing quarterback, even when you have a bad running back, they're still going to produce. But Chuba Hubbard actually offers an upside that very little other running backs do. I know that he did not perform well at his pro day. I know his 40 time was not great. However, this is a running back who was training for the Olympics. I mean, he was going to run the 100-yard dash in the Olympics because he was that blazing fast. And we saw it in the preseason, especially more than any other time, him break tackles and break long runs over and over and over again. And so when it comes to having a player with a tremendous upside, I think Chuba Hubbard could offer you that upside and could win you some weeks moving forward in this. So I actually have Chuba Hubbard ranked above Jamal Williams for my waiver wire targets this week.
Spicy.
Ooh, yeah, real spicy. All right, let's go on to the wide receiver position. Unless Steven, did you have anything you wanted to add for this?
No, I mean, I honestly think that if you're looking for a running back long term, I think Sony Michel might be worth a pickup right now. Honestly, he's owned only in like 25% of leagues right now, and you know there's some injury concerns currently with Darrell Henderson.
I put in a waiver for him. I put in a waiver claim for him. I did.
That was a smart move. I think people aren't talking the Henderson injury up that much right now, and he's been banged up kind of all season long. And if something happens to him over the next few weeks now, then I think you're getting Sony Michel now while everyone's focused on all these other guys, these backup running backs, these other backup running backs who are starting now. It might be worth going out to grab because you want to attach yourself to running backs who are high scoring offenses, and the Rams are a high-scoring offense, and they use mostly, for the most part, one running back as their primary back most weeks. And if anything, they play the Jaguars, and if they're ahead by 2 or 3 touchdowns, maybe Sony Michel will probably get into this game and maybe give you flex appeal, possibly just in this week alone. But you'll have high upside play if Henderson gets hurt anytime over the next 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, I actually put in a claim for Sony Michel in a guillotine league. There's only like 7 of us left or something, 6 of us left. And I actually put in a claim on him in the guillotine because I'm out of fab. So I had to make a safety play. And although they dropped a ton of wide receivers, a ton of running backs, opportunities to pick guys up, he's still on there. He's at the bottom, but he's still on there. All right, so Hunter Hall brings in the fact that he's picking up Josh Reynolds and dropping Curtis Samuel. So is Josh Reynolds, is he now the focal point of this offense? Is he a no-shit pickup for you guys? How do y'all feel moving forward?
I like Josh Reynolds as a DFS play, but I'm not completely sold on him right now for season long. I do think he's going to have a role in this offense. I think he's probably going to end up wide receiver 1 in this offense. I mean, who else is going to? But the Lions are just so bad. Can you really trust him going forward? Curtis Samuel just came back from IR. I think that they were kind of easing him back in. I expect him to have a much bigger role going forward, especially depending on the severity of McKissick's injury, because Samuel ran a lot of those running back routes in Carolina last season. So I'm just a little hesitant on picking up Reynolds, but for DFS, I think he's like 3,400 on DraftKings. He's a smash.
I love it. So we have, we already talked about, their schedule moving forward, right? So we have Minnesota up with, injuries all over their secondary. Once again, they're starting to plague it. Denver's allowed the 22nd most explosive pass plays, or the 22nd highest explosive pass play rate thus far in the season. Arizona, not looking so hot when it comes to their secondary as well. Their defense kind of falling apart. And then Atlanta and Seattle, for the finals, I don't mind Josh Reynolds as a pickup for deeper leagues. Now, if I'm going to pick him up in like 15 roster league or a 17 roster league, I don't know about that. But if I'm in a 20-person roster league, maybe like the Scott Fishbowl, I don't see an issue in picking up Josh Reynolds, hoping for the best, hope that he becomes that deep target. And if he sees some, volume, I'm not going to pick him up and start him this week, but he sees some volume up against Minnesota, I might actually play him up against Denver if I need a high upside type play, if I'm projected to lose by a significant amount of points. All right, so what's up?
I was real quick, Chase. I think he's worth a pickup and put on your bench kind of player right now. Yeah. And I would drop Curtis Samuel to pick up Josh Reynolds strictly because I'm scared of Curtis Samuel's injury history. And the fact is that he's not even the top. Is he really a top 3 target in their offense? I mean, you have McLaurin, you have Thomas coming back, you have Kissick basically being the 3rd wide receiver on this team most of the time. It's hard to trust Curtis Samuel that he's actually going to be on the field every single game the rest of the season, while Josh Reynolds has that connection with Goff, and the matchups aren't good enough that you could put him on your bench and see what happens with him over the next few weeks.
Well, let's go ahead and dive into another couple wide receivers, and let's bring them both up at the same time, because I kind of want to know where you all sit when it comes to Cedric Wilson or Van Jefferson. And I'm going to start out with Britt once again, because I kind of want you to sort through this and figure out which guy you want more, because you put both of them in here and you have many, many details as to why you want each one of these. So go ahead and start it out. Tell us who they are, and then give us your reason as to which one you would rather have.
Well, so news broke like late this afternoon about Cedric Wilson not practicing again. So that kind of tempers my expectation. But if he ends up practicing tomorrow, I would be confident. And he'll probably remain out there. He'll be one of those post-waiver pickups that you don't exactly have to like spend fab on or whatever. He'll still just be hanging out there if you need someone. But Amari Cooper, quote, still has a cough and he didn't practice today.
Still has a cough? That's what they said?
Yeah, that's what Mike McCarthy said. And
that's kind of funny.
One, I don't know why.
I mean, it's not funny. It's not funny, but
no, but I don't know. Like, well, he's at the facility. One, so why is he still at the facility if he has a cough? Oh. Two, Mike McCarthy was the one who delivered this information, and Mike McCarthy has COVID. So, I mean, can't they just like let McCarthy rest, like let Cooper rest? The whole like mismanagement of COVID in Dallas is just a little mind-blowing to me. But obviously the Cowboys play on Thursday. If Cooper doesn't practice tomorrow, yeah, Hunter, he totally does. There's actually, side note, there's a whole big thing about what's going on in the Cowboys organization. There's a little bit of misinformation and disinformation on how many people in the actual organization have it. So that's going to be interesting to sort out like later on. Lots of the assistant coaches, lots of the head coaches, blah, 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 blah. But that's a whole other tangent. But anyway, if Cooper doesn't end up playing, which it's doubtful that he's going to since it's Tuesday and they play on Thursday. If Wilson does practice tomorrow, he saw his second largest snap share of the season at 74%, and he logged a season high in targets, receptions, and receiving yards. Like I said, his status is going to need to be monitored, but there's a need for receivers in Dallas. If Cooper doesn't play, and it's unlikely that he will, then you've got CeeDee Lamb, Gallup, and then you've got like Noah Brown and Malik Turner. It's not going to be good. If he does play, the Saints rank 28th on the season against wide receivers. So Marshawn Lattimore is probably going to cover Lamb, and that's going to free up Wilson to turn those targets into production. And then do you want me to go on to Jefferson, or do
I want to know which one you'd rather have. Which one would you rather have, him or Van Jefferson, who's the other person you had on your list?
Right now I want Van Jefferson just because I think the long-term viability is better. I do have mixed feelings on Jefferson, but he's definitely been a consistent starter for me in Scott Fishbowl. So in terms of complete transparency, I have to go with him. We all thought that Odell Beckham was going to eat into the target share and that Odell Beckham was going to jump into the Robert Woods role. But so far it's been Van Jefferson. I mean, he saw 9 targets. He only got 3 receptions, which is a little iffy. But if you watch the game, a lot of those throws were really, you can definitely tell that Stafford isn't feeling himself, his elbow, his back, nothing's feeling great. And one of those throws was from Cooper Kupp, who, which Jefferson did catch in the end zone. He hauled it in, but it was just out of bounds. It was a bad throw because obviously it's not a quarterback throwing you the ball. And Van Jefferson does have a really good schedule going forward. He plays at home against Jacksonville this week, then at Arizona, at home against Seattle, at Minnesota, and then at Baltimore. So I think, he's a flex play for sure. Maybe a low end, like wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, depending on if he continues to get these targets. But I have no reason to think that he won't.
Oh man, Steven, are you torn right now, or are you leaning one direction or the other?
To me, I feel like it's pretty clear cut. It's Van Jefferson. Cedric Wilson, he's a great Thursday night DFS play if you want to throw him out there. Like Britt said, he had career highs in a lot of things, but there was no CeeDee Lamb on the field this past week here. CeeDee Lamb is now back. I know that Marshawn Lattimore is a great cornerback, but CeeDee Lamb is a terrific wide receiver, and they're going to find ways, and they're going to give him targets in this game here. So Wilson, for me, if you're looking, maybe if you want to go with the boom or bust Thursday night play, he's that guy. But to me, it's more of a DFS play, while Van Jefferson is clear-cutly, he's been, the 2B or 2A on this offense with Odell right now. And, he's seen 7 targets in 4 of the last 5 games now. And this offense, Stafford's dealing with his injury, but I'd rather go with the upside in that offense there, with him being the number 2 guy at times, and then Cedric Wilson, who will be a 3 this week and then probably drop down to a 4 when Cooper comes back from from COVID. So for me, it's got to be Van Jefferson.
Well, also, I think the bigger thing too is the fact that Cedric Wilson likely play outside. So he's going to be seeing the coverage from Lattimore. Lattimore's only played, I believe, 33 snaps thus far in the slot this season. And they like using CeeDee Lamb in the slot role. Like, they like him being the big slot. They like getting the mismatch up against the linebackers and up against the safeties. So they try to utilize him and get him in a certain advantageous matchups. I think that's what we're going to see moving forward. And so for that reason, I do think it's Van Jefferson, hands down. Van Jefferson's seeing the targets. He's the big play guy. He's getting the air yards, which everybody likes to hear, right? Oh, the air yards, bro, the air yards. He's getting the air yards. I'm not a big air yards guy. I like air yards, don't get me wrong, but, I don't base my whole argument off that. I think it's more so that, Stafford trusts him. He trusts him running the routes, and he trusts him. He gives him opportunities to make plays downfield. Now, does Stafford's injury worry me a little bit? Sure, but I'm not going to be too concerned when it comes to a waiver wire pickup. I'm going to grab the player with the biggest play ability and the most fantasy points to put up. So let's move on to tight ends real quick. Let's talk about Cole Kmet, because Cole Kmet's been on our no shit pickup list before. He hasn't performed necessarily well, but once again, we don't have the quarterback to throw him the ball. Andy Dalton looked great throwing the ball to Darnell Mooney, but we saw a different connection. Between Kmet, and we talked about this, Britt. The connection between Justin Fields and Cole Kmet is just magical. It's like fireworks going off. It's crazy, right? But there's no connection between Kmet and Dalton. And honestly, it's probably the opposite. I think Dalton's thrown touchdowns to Jimmy Graham, so it's the old dudes over there that are making the eye contact, getting really weird over there. But no, I think that Kmet is valid when you have Justin Fields in the game, not so much Andy Dalton. So tell me what your thoughts are with Cole Kmet.
Well, Kmet still got looks from Andy Dalton this week. He got 11 targets. Allen Robinson was out, and there's a good likelihood that Allen Robinson is going to be out next week too. So depending on, I don't think it really even matters if it's Andy Dalton under center or Fields under center. Kmet is like the proven every down, like second receiving option, basically, in that offense. I don't think, maybe he's going to get vultured by Jimmy Graham or, God forbid, even Jesper Horsted or Jesse James. But I think as far as targets go and in a PPR league, he's the guy. I don't necessarily like the matchup against the Cardinals, but their defense has kind of softened a little. And they're allowing 10.77 fantasy points per game. And the tight end position's just gross, to be honest. Like, unless you have like the Kelsey, and I want to say Kittle or Waller, but honestly, unless you have Kelsey, the tight end position's pretty gross. It's been really weird because even those other top, the two of the top three haven't really delivered. So there are definitely worse options out there. If Komet's out there, I would grab him, especially if you're in a PPR just for the target upside.
I'm a little bit nervous about how Arizona has been playing the tight ends thus far in the season. Arizona's actually been very, very good against tight ends. So that's something, that makes me a little bit hesitant. Steve, what are your thoughts on this? Is Cole Kmet a lock, a no-shit pickup for you?
No, I don't think he's a locked. I mean, I love Cole Kmet. I love his talents. I just love a consistent, target share for him that it's been kind of up and down all season here. And, obviously Dynasty, you'd love him, but in redraft right now, I mean, you could pick him up, but I feel like there are better options out there in the tight end market if you're looking for somebody this week right now. I mean, they play Arizona, then they have games against Minnesota, Green Bay, Seattle, and Giants. And Seattle, I think, is like the 15th worst team against tight ends, and that's like the easiest matchup for him the rest of the season right now. Again, maybe Fields coming back will somehow help him out, and especially with Robinson out, will keep that target share, that double-digit targets. But I don't know if he's a smash locked kind of pickup right now, but he's intriguing. But he wouldn't be my first option this week.
All right, so let's go ahead and get on to David's question. He wants to know what the best pickup is for the running back position. We have Boston Scott, Breeder, Singletary. He has Chubb on a bye, and Hubbard is on a bye as well. Wait, is Chubb on a bye this week?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, because, yep, you're right. So Singletary for me is complete fade. I believe he actually ran a good amount of routes this past week, if I remember correctly, but it was Breida. Yeah, because I actually did the study on it. So I believe Breida actually hit 9 routes run, and so he didn't qualify for the dose score. Singletary hit like 15 routes run, and he qualified, but he was absolutely terrible, in terms of catching the ball out of the backfield. Breida looks electric, and he looks like he did back 2 years ago when he was playing for the San Francisco 49ers. And I love Breida as a pickup. However, I hate his schedule moving forward. So I feel like you're going to end up having to pay up for him, and you're only going to get him for 1 week. So in a situation like this where you have Chubb and you have Hubbard, I feel like Breida's okay to pivot off to, because guess what? You only need him for 1 week, and he has the Patriots this week, and the Patriots aren't great at stopping the running back. We just saw the Patriots struggle this past week up against the Titans' 3rd and 4th string running backs. Like, this is not something that's like new for the Patriots either. They play like a bend but don't break type defense up against the running backs, and this past week they broke. Their backs broke, but that's not normally the case we see moving forward, or the case we should expect to see moving forward. However, Breida should still see opportunities in the receiving game. He should see 50, 60 yards rushing. I think he's a good pickup on the week for me. I'm avoiding Boston Scott because I just don't know what to expect from the Eagles. And I mean, Boston Scott was not efficient for the Eagles this past week. So, Stephen, we're going to start with you. How are you feeling about this one? What's your pickup?
Well, David, it depends on if you're in need of a win this week. You need your running back.
So sad to start out. Like, that was the most. Well, David, like, here's the thing.
Well, because I told you guys before the show that, like, running backs this week are so situational to me personally, because, like, Boston Scott makes the most sense. I know the running back situation is up and down right now, but Sanders continues to get hurt. Howard doesn't look like he's on track to play this week. So for me, Boston Scott this week against the New York Jets seems like just a smash hit. And I would take that approach because he's probably going to see at least 9 to 10 carries at least, and maybe a few catches in the passing game here. And Jalen Hurts is injured right now, so if he doesn't play, that might open up some more, passing targets to the running backs, because Gardner Minshew will then be playing quarterback here, or they might try to run the ball even more because Gardner Minshew is the quarterback. With Breida and Singletary, they're like, Breida's like the boomer bust guy, and Singletary's like the low floor guy. Both have a great matchup this week, but what if Zach Moss comes back in and they have a 3-way committee again? Like, then who really gets the ball? I know Breida's looked the best over the last 2 weeks now, but there's just so much uncertainty who's going to lead the team in carries or snaps this week. I mean, Singletary had like 68% and Breida only had 29.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Like, that's a good point because, if it was a threesome, it'd be okay, but it's actually going to be a foursome because Josh Allen's in there too. Right. And so, the satisfaction can happen in threesomes, but in foursomes, it rarely does. There's always somebody that's left out. We don't know which person it's going to be. So, I mean, Britt, how you feeling in this situation over here?
I'm just thinking we should ask DK Metcalf, but
a callback, the ultimate callback. That was great.
But, yeah. Whew.
Oh, I'm writing that time down.
But no, I think that you're correct. Also, I think I would rather go with Boston Scott over Breida or Singletary. I was looking at DFS value plays today, and it really looked like Miles Sanders was a good DFS play. And as I researched it more and more and more, he hasn't had a touchdown this entire year, and he's been the quote workhorse back this entire time. What makes you think that they're going to continue to give it to him down within the 20s? They're not. If they give it to anybody, it's going to be Boston Scott and Jalen Hurts. And I think that offense runs more than I don't know. It's gross. I mean, it is gross, but I think I would rather have Boston Scott over Breida or Singletary.
Yeah, I forgot what we were talking about because, we're talking about gross. We're talking about giving it to him. So let's go ahead and move on to the next position, or the next topic, I believe. Where are we? The avoids, the ones you want nothing to do with, get them off your roster. You do not need to put a waiver wire claim. This is why we do the show. This is the meat and potatoes of the show, and this is saving you guys you guys and girls, I should say, this is saving y'all money to move forward towards. So do not waste your money on these players. We're going to tell you who to avoid, and we're going to keep you guys from wearing the toilet bowl trophy around your neck. So let's go ahead and start out with your quarterback. Britt, who you got?
So it's Carson Wentz for me. I mean, Carson Wentz is dead to me. I've been advocating for him as a streaming option, and I advocated for him, and he was still out there, consistently putting up points. And then I finally had to stream him, and he just he shit the bed, to be quite honest. I mean, it was just terrible. Frank Reich looks like he's finally realized what he has in Jonathan Taylor. And I think last week Carson Wentz bounced back and put up those numbers that he was putting up earlier in the season. But next week they're facing the Texans. I mean, I expect JT to run all over them. I expect them to get the lead early. Then I expect them to put Nyheim Hines in there. Week 9, they kind of did the same thing against the Jets. It was 28-10, I think, going into halftime, something like that against the Jets. And Hines ended up running 45% of the snaps that entire game. So I just don't think that Carson Wentz is going to to be a big factor into this game. And he has a bye in week 14. So I'm definitely not pinning all my hopes and dreams on him for this week or to put me in the playoffs.
How you feeling, Steven?
Yeah, I'm kind of on board with Britt in this one. I mean, I was looking at my other quarterbacks who are free agencies. I don't think anyone's really targeting them, but people want to target quarterbacks who have a good matchup this weekend in Carson Wentz and the Houston Texans. But this is going to be another game where it's going to turn into Jonathan Taylor, and it's just going to be run, and Carson Wentz is not going to need to throw the ball that much. And he's been averaging only 25 to 28, throws a game for the most part. When a guy like Jonathan Taylor goes off for big games here, and there's some good matchups down the stretch here where I don't think they're going to have to rely on Carson Wentz. I think you're better off just going a different direction, going with the guys we already mentioned before, than go with a guy like Carson Wentz.
Yeah, and Carson Wentz is somebody that I'm absolutely avoiding moving forward up until we see something different. However, keep in mind that Jonathan Taylor is still getting involved in the passing game, and if we could see 100 yards receiving out of him, he's already halfway there to creating some sort of fantasy relevance. So 2 quarterback leagues, we're not telling you to avoid him or anything along those lines, but definitely not spending waiver wire dollars on him in single quarterback leagues. Just keep that in mind. So I'm going to jump into a guy who I don't understand why he's on waivers at all. And we're going to talk about the running back position. Tony Jones. I don't hate Tony Jones. I don't. But this is a rookie who, he's not hyper athletic, right? He's more of a banger in between the tackles where they don't want to ruin Alvin Kamara. He just got outproduced by Ty Montgomery. This is the journeyman who's seen 8 teams or something like that. And I mean, this is somebody that hasn't seen significant snaps at the running back position since like 2020 in week 17. Aside from that, it was like 2018 where you saw significant snaps at the running back position in Ty Montgomery. And yet people are telling you to go out and pick up Tony Jones. All right. I want to relive something. This might be a little bit painful for you guys. All right. But did either one of y'all spend any kind of fab on Trey Sermon or Wayne Gallman, earlier in the season, or maybe spend a draft pick on either one of those guys?
No, I drafted Trey Sermon in the Scott Fish Bowl.
Okay, so you wasted fab on him. Okay,
it's way worse than fab.
You didn't waste fab on him. You spent draft capital. Okay, so we wasted opportunities there. And Wayne Gallman, a couple weeks ago, he was supposedly the top waiver wire pickup. I know a lot of people that wasted fab on him. So let's go on to 2020. Did you guys waste any kind of fab on Devonta Freeman when he was playing for the Giants and Saquon Barkley went down?
Probably.
Yeah, I mean, people did it, but he didn't produce because he was behind a bad offensive line. He had bad matchups. Now I'm going to bring the most painful one up. All right. Mike Boone back in 2019, where he faced the Packers, and the Packers were favored significantly, but yet Mike Boone was 2 years in the league and only had 2 receptions up to that point before playing in that game. And yet Dalvin Cook was out, right? We had Alexander Mattison out. Mike Boone just came off a massive game where they destroyed like the Lions, and people went and told you to go put a ton of fab onto Mike Boone. And Mike Boone, I don't know if y'all remember. If you did, I'm sorry for bringing up this painful memory, but he completely shit the bed because Amir Abdullah took over and was the primary producer in that offense as they had to check the ball down time and time again. Mike Boone was not involved in the offense whatsoever. That's Tony Jones right now. That is Tony Jones. And people are telling you to pick him up. Well, Alvin Kamara is possibly going to play, likely going to play. Ingram's practicing. Why is he on the waiver wires? Is it because people ended up getting into it, writing about it, and then they felt like they're like, oh, I just spent an hour writing about Tony Jones. I can't just delete him out of my column now. I'm going to leave him in there. I'm just going to move him down a couple ranks. Like, why would you? He's not a good handcuff. Even if he was a starter, just like he was this past week, he was going to get outproduced by Ty Montgomery. Why are people going there and doing stuff like that? Like, you are literally losing people fantasy leagues. You need to stay away from Tony Jones. Period. The end.
Yeah, it's that whole double down mentality. Like, I can't admit that my takes are wrong situation.
It's absurd.
But like, just to go further, because I really wanted to say this, like, he put up 27 yards on 16 carries. That's literally an average of 1.69 yards per carry. I could fall down like this, just stand there and fall down and get more yards of carry than that. Like, it's just so crazy.
All right, Britt, we're putting you in.
Average. I mean, do it, man. I feel like I'm taller than a bunch of the running backs in the league. So,
all right, Steve, do you have any different take on that, or do you agree?
No, I mean, I could probably name like 10 different running backs I'd rather pick up this week than pick up Tony Jones. It's just
Jamar Jefferson.
I'd probably pick up Jamar Jefferson than Tony Jones right now. Mark Ingram, I think, is playing in this matchup. I think he's a good to go. So he's going to be the starter without a doubt.
Even as a handcuff, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely absurd. Like, he's not a good handcuff, even if he is.
Like a 1 week handcuff, but like, why would you want him anyway? It's just a roster spot.
I don't even think it's a 1 week handcuff because, like, all right, sure, like, you might get him this week as a backup, but even if Kamara and Ingram go out, I mean, he has the Buccaneers, the Dolphins, and the Panthers, along with, I believe, a bye week. No, it's the Jets. So he has one good matchup. He has the Jets, but he has the Buccaneers, Dolphins, and the Panthers in the playoffs. Do you really feel good rolling him out in that? No. Get away from Tony Jones. All right. Britt, who do you got up there? I see your first person on there, and it's somebody that I said I actually want on my roster. So let's hear what you have to say. Bring it on.
Well, I have Chuba Hubbard because unlike Alexander Mattison, Hubbard isn't really a clear handcuff. He's splitting time with Amir Abdullah, and we don't really know yet how it's going to shake out in this backfield. When he took over for McCaffrey earlier in the season, like, he got the volume because he was the only guy, right? But Abdullah, since coming on like mid-season, has really seen a lot more. He's seen some value in the passing game. He's seen some value in the running game. We don't know if Chuba Hubbard is going to be the clear-cut handcuff. I think that you could possibly go after Abdullah and he wouldn't cost you anything, and it would still offer as much upside as Hubbard would without blowing your fab dollars. Their upcoming schedule also sucks. They've got a bye this week, so obviously you can't use them this week, and then they get Atlanta. But then when you're going into your playoff picture, it's Buffalo, Tampa, at New Orleans, and then at Tampa. Like, that's gross. That's hard. And I just would not want to do it unless you absolutely have to. And then I understand, because deep leagues are what they are, but I'm not putting my faith in Hubbard.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the schedule's not sexy. You can't disguise that. And when you talk about a bye week and then 3 tough weeks, I just brought up a schedule, so all of a sudden I got to argue against it. Essentially, Atlanta is somebody that I definitely want to play him at, and if that creates some alleviation, cool. But Tampa Bay has actually been a little bit more porous up against the running backs as of late, and I think with their defense, you could also see some short field positions. I mean, Josh Allen is no stranger to turning the ball over thus far this season and giving the other team many opportunities. Plus, they've been very ballsy on 4th down so far this season. They haven't always converted. And then we talk about Tampa Bay and how they've struggled up against teams as of late. And I think that they could get back to, allowing teams to run against them from time to time, because they're dropping so many people into coverage, trying to mask what's going on in that secondary with all the injuries. I mean, we saw Antonio Gibson, do well with them. Plus Tampa Bay, I know that Amir Abdullah is there, but I still think that Chuba Hubbard could break a big one and also get some work in the passing game. So I can't sit there and say that Chuba Hubbard's a lock. Like I said, I was very on him, and I do like him more than I like Williams, but I'm right there. I'm on the edge. Steven?
Yeah, I'm with Britt on this one. I do not want anything with Chuba Hubbard, honestly. I mean, if you need a running back, you got to go pick up a running back because he's going to be the starter. But the way I see it is, like, the matchups aren't good down the stretch here, and he's only had 3 games as an RB2 this season. Everything else was worse. So he's at best a low-end RB2, and the moment Amir Abdullah came, the last 2 weeks before Christian McCaffrey kind of really came back, I mean, Chuba Hubbard, I can't say his name, Hubbard had 4 targets, and I can't talk, I'm tired, guys. He had 4 targets.
Ginger ale.
It's a ginger ale, yeah. He had 2 targets the last 2 games before Christian McCaffrey came back. Amir Abdullah had 10. So clearly they like Amir Abdullah in this passing role here, and Hubbard just really didn't impress me enough to be like, I got to go spend all my money again and get him back on my team if you dropped him. Hopefully those who kept him, but if you dropped him and you want to go pick him back up now, he's not worth the big fab now. I don't see it right now. I'd rather go get the Tennessee Titans wide receivers and hold them from on my bench than go get Hubbard right now.
All right, I got one more running back for you. Then we're going to move on to wide receivers, and we have tight ends after that. The running back for me is Rex Burkhead, and I just don't get it. Like, people are like, volume. He's getting 18 touches. Yeah, but you have to be on a good offense to have decent volume. Like, this is the same exact argument we heard, for example, Devonta Freeman, right? He's going to see volume. They love to run the ball. Get out of here with that shit. Like, that is like the biggest scam you will ever hear, is the running back will see volume. The running back also has to be talented, and they have to have a good offensive line. We could talk about like the Najee Harrises of the world, right? I mean, Najee Harris really has not produced without his receiving work, because Big Ben can't throw it further downfield than 15 yards. Like, what would Najee Harris be if we limited him to, 3 receptions a game? Well, he would be what he has been over the past few weeks, which is terrible.
It hurts.
Well, maybe
my
not terrible,
soul.
but it's not great. It's not great. I don't think it's terrible. Real quick, let me go ahead and pull this up real quick. I don't want to sound terrible. He's giving you less than what it was. This past game, it was 6.7, and then he's been below 20 points, which was nothing close to what he was prior to this. And Najee Harris is an electric athlete. So we were talking about an electric athlete, the best running back in this draft, right? And he comes out, and he's killing it with the receiving work. He doesn't get the receiving work, and now he's, sitting there at the back end of a running back one. What do you think Rex Burkhead, who has never been a starter almost his entire career, does not get involved in the passing work? Like, what do you think he's going to end up being? Nothing. He's playing for the Texans. All right. Like, this makes no sense to me as to why people are saying, go pick him up. I'd much rather have a David Johnson, believe it or not. And it's honestly because of the inability for the Texans to sustain drives. Now, they cannot create big plays. They can't sustain drives. So what has to happen? Well, you have to have big playability, and David Johnson somewhat has that. I don't like it. I'm not a David Johnson fan. I'm far and away from a David Johnson fan. But he's seen the work in the passing consistently, right? Like, sure, Rex Burkhead had 3 targets this past game. He hasn't had 3 targets, I don't think, the entire season outside of maybe one game. Maybe one game.
Well, that's because they got rid of Philip Lindsay. So obviously it's Burkhead now, right?
Oh my God. Philip Lindsay was never in there. Philip Lindsay was never in there.
That's the joke.
I know. And it's crazy. It's like, oh yeah, they got rid of Philip Lindsay. He's actually relevant. No, he's not relevant. And when we talk about the dose score, right, it's a dump off containment efficiency score. You guys can find it on fantasyintervention.com/dose. Over the next 2 weeks, if you need a fill-in, David Johnson, right? We're talking about Rex Burkhead being terrible, but David Johnson is kind of somewhat relevant, and he's not like a no-shit pickup. I'm just saying if you're desperate. The Colts allow a 5.83 dump-off containment efficiency score, which is number 21 in the NFL, and they face the 5th easiest schedule thus far in the season. Meanwhile, the Seahawks, who they have the week after that, allow a 8.85 dump-off containment efficiency score, which is 31st in the NFL. We just saw Antonio Gibson and J.D. McKissic put up 24.1 points on the Seahawks. Like, David Johnson is a way, way, way better pickup than Rex Burkhead. Don't give me that Rex Burkhead garbage. I don't care about the schedule. This is a bad team, people. This is a bad team. You do not want a first and second out back who carries between the 20s, who doesn't even see red zone opportunities as your lead back that you're rolling out there regardless of the schedule. Do either one of y'all have anything to add?
I'm just wondering if you need to take a breath, like get some oxygen.
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and move on. What do you want? The wide receivers?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. So it's kind of funny because Britt and I have this next one together. I wrote an article and she has it on here. So I'm glad that we're on the same page with this. Let's hear what you have to say about Kendrick Bourne.
So again, he's another one that I picked up in Scott Fishbowl. So I have to be totally transparent. I'm very glad that he's produced for me, but every week I kind of pucker and pray that he's going to do something. Like, I don't rely on him to do the things. He was second on the team in receiving touchdowns behind Hunter Henry. He's had 3 touchdowns the past 3 weeks, but he still only played half the snaps, which is 55%, and saw 6 targets. So his stat line looks really good, but then he plays against Buffalo in week 13, and then he has a bye. So I'm not really looking for him to be somebody to carry me into the playoffs with a tough matchup, divisional matchup at that against Buffalo, and then a championship. Like, I love Bourne as a player, but this is crunch time, and you've got to separate your love for your logic at this point.
Chase, you're on mute, my friend.
My bad.
You're on mute.
That's the second time I've done that today. So no, I completely agree with you on that aspect. And I mean, chasing points is one of the worst things you can do in fantasy. This is the exact situation of chasing points. I mean, the wide receivers that are available on waivers is actually pretty good overall, because we only had the Chiefs and the Cardinals, right, that were on bye this past week. And you might have dropped Mecole Hardman and Rondale Moore. Well, that's not, massive, guys that you want to bring up in your waiver wire pieces. Oh, they're coming back from waivers, or they come back from bye, and they might be on waivers. Meanwhile, when we look back and we see like the outliers from the previous producing weeks, such as Marquez Valdes-Scantling in week 11, Brian Edwards in like week 10. I mean, there was like 4 players in week 9 that were like, big producers that were in the top 15 for the first time. And so we didn't have a bunch of people that are chasing points. So this week, waivers at the wide receiver position were way more sensical. Like, I didn't see anybody putting out, like, for example, Randall Cobb wasn't a big one after, he produced back a few weeks ago with the 2 touchdown game. I saw everybody shouting about it. I'm like, that was lucky. Like, he had 2 receptions in the end zone, and it was pretty much determined off luck. Like, the defender missed the ball by centimeters. This week, he actually played well, but the Rams, guess what? They always, give up passes underneath. They give up a ton of volume underneath, and they tend to give up yards underneath as well. And that's where Randall Cobb got his value. So when we look forward to week 13, it's like, okay, a bunch of people saw that, they realized it, so a bunch of people weren't running out saying Randall Cobb. So overall, like, this was kind of the harder position for me to try and trash at the wide receiver position, but Kendrick Bourne was pretty easy for me because you're just chasing points. You're literally just chasing points. And, this Patriots defense is most likely going to run the ball a ton moving forward. And, I really don't have too much else to add on to that. So don't chase the points. Stay away from Kendrick Bourne. And Steve.
He's been wide receiver 10 since week 6. Just saying.
He has, and he's been
I get your
guys'
guys' points. I get your points. And most of his big games have come when he scored touchdowns, big touchdowns.
And he threw a touchdown for one too.
He did throw a touchdown for one, yes. But I'm not saying don't pick him up. I think he's worth a pickup. I'm not saying he's got to go spend my money on him. Got to go get. I have to get this. He's not. I have to get this guy. He's a guy that if he happens to miss waivers or if you want to throw a small claim in, I like him still. I know he has the Bills twice, but the Bills just lost Tre'Davious White. So, and he's not even the number one option. So, defenders are not worrying about him. They're worrying about Jacoby Myers. For some reason, Nelson Aguilar is still playing a ton of snaps. But people are, focusing on him. And Kendrick Bourne is being used in certain ways to get the ball in his hand. I like that. Again, he's not a every week got to start him guy, but he's a cool boomer bust, wide receiver 3 flex option for you that could help you win a week, could help you lose a week, but you take that risk as a boomer bust guy. And I think as a low bid on him, $2 or $3, whatever, or you wait until after waivers run if he's still sitting there, you want to scoop him on your team. I like him. I like him as at least a bench guy on your team and see if maybe his targets come more consistent down the stretch.
I will say real quick, I had Kendrick Bourne's back this past week. I was like, you got to play him. Mike talked me into it. But he is wide receiver 23 in points per game thus far from week 6 until week 12. So he's just played one more game than everybody else that game. He ended up going off for it. I don't see that ceiling happening again anytime soon. Could happen up against the Bills. I guess we'll find out. As for, let's see, the other wide receiver that you have, Britt. Sorry, I'm all over the place. Laviska Shenault. Tell me a little bit about Laviska Shenault, because I like Laviska, but he's been tough to trust, and we thought that he was going to have a potential breakout this past week. He did not. But now they have Dan Arnold out, so he has to produce now, right?
Yeah, but O'Shaughnessy's back. O'Shaughnessy's back. And O'Shaughnessy was the dude in week 1 before he got hurt,
How many people do we have to tout are going to be out from the Jaguars?
No,
before it becomes relevant.
So crazy. It's and I was a Laviska truther. I wrote a whole second and third year wide receiver breakout candidate article, and Viska was on my list. And it really hurts to be wrong about things, but you have to, you can't double down. You have to admit when you're wrong. And I was wrong about Laviska. He saw the most targets last week. He saw 9 targets, but he only caught 5 of them for 33 yards. 5 for 33. They're running him out of the slot again, which is his more natural position. But Laquan freaking Treadwell led the Jags in receiving yards.
That's embarrassing.
Laquan Treadwell. I can't. Urban Meyer has no clue what he's doing in the NFL. And the matchup's not good in week 13. They're playing the Rams.
But they allow points to the slot.
I just still, what's it going to be? A 2-yard pass to the slot? The routes are going to be disgusting. It's not going to be, it's just the way that Urban Meyer schemes his offense. It's just not going to be good. And I'm out.
Oh, it's terrible. It's brutal. It's damning. And if you watch the game, by the way, I don't know anybody that actually watched the Jacksonville game, but I did. And we talk about Lawrence. He was getting his players decked. They were getting housed time after time. He was throwing passes that were getting his receivers going vertical, or horizontal. And I'm not talking about, horizontal from side to side. I'm talking about their bodies were horizontal, including Laquan Treadwell on one play, because they were getting hit so hard because it was so many bad passes that he was leading his receivers into. It's no wonder that his receivers are all hurt. He's used to having just open receivers constantly at the college level, being able to throw them open. That's not the case. He's trying to lead his receivers, and they are getting decked by these more athletic defenses. Hopefully he learns and progresses in the offseason. I still like Laviska Shenault. I'm not going to say go pick him up, but I'm also not going to say don't pick him up or play him in a bad league. We just saw it with Randall Cobb, right? Players that get targets close to the line of scrimmage up against the Rams always end up producing. We saw it with DeAndre Swift. We've seen it with running backs time and time again. We've seen it with slot receivers. Anybody who plays underneath has typically had a good game against them. So I'm not going to say completely avoid him, but I'm also not going to say go pick him up. I'm almost in take lock because I traded a first-round pick for him the week after Chark got hurt, and
that's why.
in pain. So, yeah, and I'm not a Laviska Shenault fan. I just needed a wide receiver because I had Chark. So I went out and moved on what I thought was contender, a first-round pick for him.
My thing was, like, after ETN got hurt and, like, went out with the Liz Frank, that, you know, they were moving ETN out to the slot, like, as a receiving back. And I thought for sure, like, Viska was going to come in. And when that didn't happen, I was like, oh, no, this is bad. This is very, very, very bad. And then I've just kind of watched the downfall as it's happened. And it's
the echo chamber got me.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, for real. But it's just, and he's not talented, you know? It's just Urban Meyer's a horrendous coach.
All right. So let's hop on to the tight end position. And you have a player that's a little bit interesting to me, Ryan Griffin, who, I mean, I don't really understand what's happening over there with the Jets offense. I mean, Zach Wilson looks absolutely terrible, and I can't figure it out. Like it's baffling for the life of me why he doesn't listen to the coaches. Obviously, they have a certain offense that is very similar to the offense of the 49ers, and Mike White executed it flawlessly. Josh Johnson executed it flawlessly. Even Joe Flacco did a pretty damn good job at executing this offense. And this offense isn't talented enough to win anything. Their defense isn't good enough to keep teams low enough. So it's not ready yet. But we at least see this thing start to happen, this mold, right, of this offense is starting to come together. And yet Wilson comes in and it looks like the offense is foreign to him. And he's been in this offense now for 6 months. I don't understand what's happening. Please talk to me about Ryan Griffin and why you're avoiding him outside of the reasons I just stated.
I honestly don't understand. Like, everyone's like, oh, yeah, it's a great matchup. Like, he's playing the Eagles. Well, we saw that happen last week with Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram didn't do anything against the Eagles. So, well, and the Giants had half of their receiving weapons missing, and they still weren't able to take advantage of it. So, Griffin only has 1 touchdown on the season.
Myrick, don't you shame Myrick. Don't you shame Myrick. He got a touchdown.
He did. You're correct in that. You're correct.
2 receptions for, like, I think 11 yards or something and a touchdown. Just saying.
You're correct. But that's also DFS purposes and not season-long purposes.
You're so right.
So, and to completely caveat that, like, I do like Griffin for DFS this week because he's only like 2,700. If you're going to punt on tight end, sure, why not? But in season-long, there are so many better streamers out there. And Griffin only has 1 touchdown in the season. He's only seen an average of 3 targets a game. Like, why would you do this to yourself? Like, if you want to take a flyer in DFS, like I said, play the matchup. But, like, why would you do this to yourself in season long? I don't get it.
Makes no sense to me. I can't get on it. Steve, are you picking up Griffin in the waivers this week?
No, I'm not. I mean, I've always thought of the situation was like, just because it's a good matchup doesn't mean you should go pick up that tight end there. And I feel like if you look at the tight ends that are like just no names or don't produce, it doesn't mean they're going to all of a sudden just produce against a good matchup. That's just not how it works constantly. So Ryan Griffin has been basically a no-show all season. It doesn't mean he's going to be a great tight end this week just because the matchup is fantastic.
I feel like that if you were tweeting that, you'd be subtweeting Chris Myrick. Just so let me talk about a player that, you know, if you want a championship belt, right? You got a championship belt right here. This thing is gorgeous. This thing is heavy. It has a ton of weight to it. I mean, I'm not kidding you guys. This thing is massive, and it's cool because you can actually get like your league engraved on here with like the winners and stuff, and you get different plates every year. It's really sick. It's from TrophySmack.com. You guys use promo code CIRCLE at checkout. Go to TrophySmack.com, use promo code CIRCLE. Make sure there's a belt and or a trophy in your cart along with the ring. You'll actually get a $60 ring for free. And they actually have this one. It's cool. It has a bobblehead, and you can it's a Batman bobblehead, but you can put your own head on it, and it's a topper that goes on top. And yeah, it's sick. It's badass. But it's on sale right now. I just saw it earlier today because I was on it looking at trophies for my league. I'm not even joking. and it's like, I think it's normally like $370. It's on sale right now. It's like 300, something like that. So if you get that, you throw the ring in your cart. You go to checkout, use promo code CIRCLE. You'll get that $60 ring for free. So you're pretty much saving like $120 on a purchase. But yeah, so if you want one of these, right? A player you should not pick up is Evan Engram, because Evan Engram will drop this like so. And just like he's dropped pretty much every single ball. You guys know that he has never had a season where he has had more touchdowns than drops. He's never had a season where he's had more touchdowns than drops. He's had more drops or equal the amount of drops to touchdowns that he's had in every single season thus far in the NFL. And it's brutal. I mean, we talk about the Eagles, right? And how bad the Eagles are at covering the tight end position, and how Chase Myrick, I say that, I have trouble saying that every single time. Chase Myrick actually performed up against them by getting a touchdown on them. The Eagles have allowed 1,214 yards, or they're on pace to allow 1,214 yards, 120 receptions, and 13 touchdowns to the tight end position. That equals out to 318.27 fantasy points. The last time that a team gave up more than 318.27 fantasy points to the tight end position is the Cardinals in 2013. And that's when their defense was abysmal. And guess what? Teams couldn't even pass to the wide receivers because they had Patrick Peterson in their prime that year. So they just passed to the tight end every single play. That's not the case for the Eagles. The Eagles are just absolutely terrible, and their secondary is abysmal, and tight ends can produce. And yet Evan Engram went out and put, 3 receptions for 37 yards, I believe, on 6 targets? What?
It was
what? Are you kidding me? Mm-hmm. I mean, and people are like, oh, Myrick, he vultured Evan Engram on getting a touchdown. I'm like,
Engram wasn't going to get that anyway.
No, he wasn't. They would have kicked a field goal. Evan Engram has seen 4 targets in the red zone this season. 4. Like, that is it. They don't trust him in the red zone because he drops everything. He's only been targeted 1 time on a pass of 20 yards or more. They do not trust him. You know, his drop rate has never dropped below 6%. It's never dropped below 6%. He's been in like the top 15 drop rate or drops every single year since he's come to the league, because that's what he does. That's who Evan Engram does. He's not a good tight end. And I cannot believe after he put up 3 for 37, because he's getting the targets, he is a tight end that people are telling you to go and pick up. It is mind-blowing to me. And sure, I've taken a shot once or twice thus far on the season. And sure, he does have a advantageous schedule moving forward, but they are going to phase him out of the offense. This is going to be one of his last years with the Giants in a major role. I mean, Chase Myrick might have taken the job for him. It is mind-blowing. See, typically, if a wide receiver has a low ADOT, like Evan Engram, has the second lowest ADOT on the season for tight ends with 40 or more targets. And if receivers or tight ends normally have a low ADOT, it's because they're getting used in the red zone, right? And they're getting a ton of targets in the red zone. I.e. Pat Freiermuth, who has like 16, I believe, targets in the red zone so thus far this season, maybe 15. He has a low ADOT as well. Evan Engram has 4, right? Pat Freiermuth has 16. Then we talk about Tyler Higbee, right? He's the only one with a lower ADOT than Evan Engram. Well, Higbee has the most red zone targets on the entire season thus far for the tight end position. Okay, so if you're not doing that, the other people that have low ADOTs, all right, let's talk about Dan Arnold or Zach Ertz. They're getting targets and they're getting yards after the catch. They're getting ball close to the line of scrimmage and screen opportunities, crossing routes, and then they're getting yards after the catch. Evan Engram is doing neither one of those. He's not getting red zone targets. He's not getting utilized in the red zone, and he's not getting yards after the catch. It is absolutely abysmal. His average yards per route run is it's gross. Like, why is Evan Engram a topic? I can't even talk about it anymore. I don't know if you guys want to visit this or if you guys want to hop on the gems, because I keep on going on these rants and I don't want you guys' ears to bleed, especially talking about Evan Engram, because that's bleed worthy by itself, much less me yelling about it. But
I'm just going to literally like get you some oxygen, like just sent to your home.
Whew. It's bad. It's bad. Are you guys ready to talk about some gems, or do y'all want to talk about Evan Engram some more? Because I might.
No, please, let's get off Evan Engram, please.
All right, let's move on to a couple of gems. Some players that are a little bit deeper you might want to. Oh no, you did not put this as the first player, Britt. You did not.
It's kind of intriguing. It's intriguing. And there is a caveat in there. There is a caveat.
All right, so we're going to talk about the gems. These are the players who you might want to sneak onto your rosters before anybody else has a chance to, whether that's putting $1 down, in Fab or wait until they process past waivers. We're going to talk about some of these players. And Philip Lindsay.
It's gross. But, I mean, he changed teams. He got the carries. I mean, he's second behind Gaskin. And he's facing the Giants, then a bye, then the Jets. So, like, if you're in a deep league, and especially deep PPR leagues, like, scoop him up and stash and see what happens. Like, you don't have to invest any fab on him. If you're just kind of looking for some, like, wild card, like Charlie Day style and Always Sunny to, like, wreck the competition if and when it happens, do it.
Oh,
now I'm not starting him. Don't get me wrong. I'm definitely not starting him, but his workload in his first week there was like kind of intriguing.
Oh man. Oh, Steven, are you stashing Philip Lindsay?
Unless
everybody's getting
it's
sick
week
talking
13.
Yeah, 3.5 yards per carry. Come on now.
If I was desperate, I needed running back depth. I mean, it's intriguing that he did get 12 carries. I mean, Gaskins looked good in fantasy, but he hasn't ran that well this season here. Maybe Miami at some point wants to get Philip Lindsay the ball more. They did put a waiver claim in for a reason. So there is some positives towards it, but it's more of like you're not starting him anytime soon, unless Gaskins gets hurt or Miami makes a major switch at their running back position after the bye week.
Are there any connections with the coaching tree over there and Myles Gaskin? And Philip Lindsay?
Don't believe so. Of our coaching staff.
I might want to look into that and see if there's any connection to the college ranks or when he was with Denver. So I'm kind of curious about that. But maybe they made a couple phone calls and Bill O'Brien got in the ear of what's his name? I don't know. This is something as to where Philip Lindsay for me has always been, non-nookie outside of his rookie year.
I know what it is. One of our co-offensive coordinators, Eric Studsfeld, he was with the Denver Broncos in 2019.
There it is.
Philip Lindsay's rookie year, I believe.
There it is. That's connection. That's the one we were looking for. That's it. See, you're like a detective over there. You're a detective. Detective Steve. You should change your name. Instead of Coach Steve, let's go with Detective Steve. All right, so let's hop on to another one. Wait, Steve, do you have one that you'd like to bring to the forefront?
Yeah, actually, I would. I think if you're looking for a tight end situation, James O'Shaughnessy. Britt mentioned him briefly before, taking over the number one role basically for some reason in this offense. But James O'Shaughnessy, for some reason, I like him. I've always liked him. I feel like whenever he was the main tight end, he always seemed to kind of produce him, but then he got hurt all the time, unfortunately. But in 2 games that he's fully played, he's had 5 targets. And it seems like first game back from injury, he's already seeing 5 targets. Dan Arnold is now out for the season here. If you're like desperate for a tight end situation, you could probably just wait until your waivers are done and just pick him up and see if he continues to see this workload the rest of the season.
Yeah, I completely agree on that.
I mean,
he was the focal point. Like I said, week 1, he had 8 targets. And then he got hurt week 2. And then they did the trade for Dan Arnold. And then Dan Arnold came in and was like the team high target leader. So I have no reason to think that Urban Meyer is going to just suddenly adjust his game scheme to scheme out the tight ends when O'Shaughnessy comes back.
Yep, I like it. I can hop on board with that. Britt, who's your next person up?
I have Josh Reynolds. So he's only rostered in 0.3% of ESPN and 1% of Yahoo leagues, but he's led the team in offensive snaps the past 2 weeks at 90% and 88%. The Thanksgiving game saw him get 3 receptions on 5 targets. He got 70 yards and a touchdown. I mean, that's crazy. That's crazy. And of course, like, you don't want to chase points and whatever, but Reynolds has a report built in with Goff. they played together in LA with the Rams. So with Swift out and there's no real clear-cut wide receiver role, like I think Reynolds can come in and like settle in as the wide receiver 1, especially going forward. They're trying so hard to not be winless. I mean, the tie doesn't really count, right? No. They want to win a game. And so I can see them being scrappy and using Reynolds to try to do that.
Yeah, I like Reynolds. We talked about it briefly when the show started. I think that he's somebody that can perform, and he's somebody that I'm willing to stash on the bench to see if he gets the targets. He's almost in like a Kendrick Bourne type situation where he's like, almost no name, so nobody's really gunning for him. But, as we get closer to the playoffs and he keeps performing, I think he's somebody that you want to pick up and have on your roster. So that's an excellent, excellent pick. I'm going to go with somebody that might be rostered. He's rostered in 36% of leagues, according to Sleeper. And this is a player who, we almost forget it because he didn't do much with it, but he just saw 11 receptions for 53 yards. Or 51 yards, I apologize. And then he had a rush for 27 yards on top of that. I mean, Rondale Moore, man. Like, he is so close to breaking out. He's right there on the edge, and he hasn't done it yet. And he's probably not going to do it this season in terms of having 3 or 4 games straight where he's producing because, Kyler Murray's back. He can run the ball. He's not going to check it down as much as McCoy was doing, et cetera. But, I mean, I still think that we could see a higher level of performance out of Rondale Moore where they script him in the offense more than what we've seen. And I think that they could use some of the guys on the outside to take away some pressure, allowing him to see some opportunities like we saw early in the season. I think defenses are going to forget about him just as much as we have kind of forgot about him. And I could see him actually being a guy that I want to roster as we sit there and we look at Chicago, been subpar up against wide receivers, the Rams, who allow wide receivers underneath to get targets. We've talked about it now 3 times tonight. Detroit, and then Indianapolis, and then Dallas up against Jordan Lewis to cap off your fantasy championship. Give me Rondale Moore up against Jordan Lewis, baby. Let's go, Britt. I love that matchup. I am just slobbering all over the place thinking about the matchup of Rondale Moore up against Jordan Lewis. It's going to be fire, baby. It's going to be fire.
Fire.
It's going to be gross.
She's a Dallas fan.
Oh, that makes sense now.
All right.
No, I really do like Rondale Moore. And I think, even if Hopkins comes back, a lot of the coverage is going to be geared towards stopping him. And he's going to get double covered a lot. And then they're going to pull away from Moore. And I mean, AJ Green's kind of dusty still, right?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So what are the chances? Let me just hear your chances on Trayvon Diggs, right? Covering Hopkins if he's healthy. And then having coverage over the top on AJ Green or Christian Kirk to keep the deep passes from going down the field. And then Jordan Lewis getting stuck in one-on-one coverage up against Rondale Moore.
Well, I actually like Kelvin Joseph or Israel Mukuamu to come in and handle that in week 17. So,
oh yeah. Wait, you think that Lewis is going to get replaced, or you think they're going to play more dime?
I don't think Lewis is going to get replaced. Honestly, I think that Anthony Brown after this week is going to get replaced, and they're going to move Lewis to the outside, and then move like Joseph to the slot corner, and then Mukuamu is like a strong safety.
Yeah, I like it. All right, so let's hop on to your last person because this is somebody that I actually really liked, your take on, because it was somebody that I was thinking about putting as a gem, but you snagged him. So let's hear who that is.
So it's Juwan Jennings. I mean, San Francisco, it was a couple weeks ago. Brad Evans on Fade the Noise is like, Juwan Jennings receiving yard prop is so high, and I don't understand why. Something happened. Like, they know more than we know. And I'm like, well, yeah, they do. I mean, he's been the guy, right? And yeah. Debo's injured. He played 37% of the snaps. He saw more snaps than Trent Sherfield, and he saw 3 targets, which was 1 more than George Kittle, which still blows my mind. I don't think that's going to be the status quo going forward. But with Debo out, he's definitely going to be in line for target share, and he caught a touchdown last week. The upcoming schedule looks pretty damn tasty. He's at Seattle, at Cincy, which is probably the hardest of the next 5, but then versus Atlanta, at Tennessee, and versus Houston. So depending on how long Debo's out, I think Jennings is going to slide right into that role, and he's going to have a major target share and a major role on this offense.
Kyle Shanahan has been looking for this type of wide receiver now for so many years, since Pierre Garçon left, right? Like, he's been looking for this type of receiver, and Juwan Jennings is nowhere close to ready. I'm not saying he's going to play, an alpha role or anything like that. Like, please don't get me wrong. But they will script plays for him to play this alpha role, which they haven't had. They thought that Jalen Hurd was going to get it. He's been hurt now for several years. And Juwan Jennings, could have taken it over last year, but he was dealing with some minor injuries. And, like I talked about, he was more of a developmental prospect. So Juwan Jennings moving forward is somebody that I did not like in the draft, but he fits the ideal profile for Kyle Shanahan. Now, if Kyle Shanahan goes out and drafts wide receiver, in the second or third round this upcoming year, that's all to hell. But for dynasty rosters, I would at least stash Juwan Jennings in hopes that he does carve out a role for himself as the prototypical X receiver that Kyle Shanahan covets so much. So as for the playoffs right now, I still want him on my roster. I'm feasting even heavier in dynasty. All right, Steve, do you have any other players, or do you have a take on Juwan Jennings?
I do have one other player here, and there's another tight end here. And this is maybe for deeper leagues or definitely DFS play over the next month of the season. But Bevan Jordan from the Houston Texans
so
here.
Sexy.
He has played the last 4 games, and he's had at least 3 targets in each of those games, and he's had 2 tight end 1 performances, mostly because he caught a touchdown. That's kind of how tight end 1s work, basically. But he did play 60% of the snaps his first time this season after being around 30. And Danny Amendola, I believe, is banged up here. I think they had Jordan Akins that's been gone for the last couple of weeks now. So he's been kind of working his way into this offense more. They don't have a lot of weapons here. And he's got a pretty good rest of season schedule for the rest of the season right now. He's got Indy, Seattle, Jacksonville, the Chargers. And he came coming out of the draft. He was just basically an athletic beast coming out of the draft here. And he seems to have finally found a role in this offense with the Texans. And if he could see maybe a couple more targets, he could be someone that you might want to keep your eyes on, especially if he's out there in dynasty leagues. For sure, if he's out there, go pick him up. But in redraft, it might be something that you might want to keep your eye
on. Let's get Chase a fan and some oxygen.
Oh, man. I was getting really hot and bothered backstage. I don't know if you're listening to the podcast, but that's what has happened if you're listening. I'm getting very hot and bothered. Now, Brevin Jordan's somebody that's really sexy, moving forward for me, and he's somebody that I've stashed everywhere in dynasty leagues. I'm pretty sure I have him in almost every single league because he's somebody that reminded me almost exactly of Delaney Walker, big physical guy, somebody that can run with the ball in their hands after the catch. Somebody that plays the ball more like a wide receiver than just tight end, but he can still block if asked to, although he was not asked to. This far in the season or in college, really. But he can do it when asked to. And when he does block, he gets really physical and he gets mean. He's really knocking guys out. If you go back, watch his, not his college highlights, because they will never be in his college highlights. But if you go back and watch his college game film, you're going to see him just run and deck people over and over and over again. And they're fair blocks. It's not like he's blindsiding them. He is literally just going up against guys and he's bowling them over. And he's mean while he's doing it, which is my favorite, aspect for Brevin Jordan. But to be, completely honest, he also carries the same injury history that Brevin Jordan carries, which makes me, that Delaney Walker carries, which makes me extremely nervous because they're both physical. They both have the same exact tendencies. So moving forward, Brevin Jordan is definitely somebody that I want on my rosters. And for dynasty purposes, I absolutely want him on there. But I wouldn't go out and try and make, an acquisition for him necessarily. I would, if he's on your rosters, I'd get him. I'd hold him as back end hope. But I would also be very, very I'd be easy to drop him for redraft if somebody comes available that I actually really want.
Absolutely.
All right. Is that it? We done? We're done. Yeah. This was a long one. It was almost as long as last week. We need to figure out a way to cut this down when we have 3 people on.
Oh, last week was so much longer, though. We did a good job cutting it down today.
Not talking about Evan Ingram, you might be okay.
Yeah, true story. Oh, man. All right, Steve, where can we find you, man? Where can all the good people go to listen to your content and find your info?
Yeah, absolutely. So our main Twitter page is the Fantasy Coaches over at Coaches Fantasy. You can follow us there. Ask us any fantasy questions. We podcast a couple times a week, so just here to help you guys win championships.
Love it, Britt. What you got going on?
Well, you can find me at Twitter at Brit_Flynn. Obviously, this podcast, I do a weekly DFS value article on Finding Chance Fantasy. I do a weekly post waiver article on Fantasy Intervention here lately. And then every Sunday morning, I do a start sit / injury podcast with Kevin Tompkins and Gary Haddow called The Calm Before the Storm.
Absolutely love it. Love it. And yeah, I'm stoked about your post waiver wire pickups. They're going to get even more relevant as we move forward and we work our way into the playoffs, because it's going to count so much more when you're able to find players after the waivers pass that will affect, your semifinals or affect your finals. And you don't have to worry about trying to outbid somebody with limited, fab dollars left on your roster. So yeah, absolutely love it. And stoked for that. I'm excited for where we're going to go with this podcast. So I want to give everybody a quick heads up. As we move into the off season, this waiver wire show is not going anywhere. It will just adjust slightly. Britt is a college fiend, and so we're going to take advantage of that, and we're going to explore some of the college players. We're going to explore some of the positional needs for teams. We're going to explore everything from quarterback additions to running back additions to wide receiver additions, coaching changes, everything that y'all have. We're going to be exploring all of that in depth moving forward. That'll be on Tuesdays, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, of course. And yeah, Britt will be heading that once again because she's a superstar and that's what she does. But yeah, I'm excited for it. So you guys can find all of my content over there at FF_Intervention. You can find Join Our Circle or Fantasy Intervention over there at Join Our Circle _ on Twitter. You guys can find all of my content at fantasyintervention.com along with the dose score, fantasyintervention.com/DOCE. You guys can find my DFS articles over there at playerprofiler.com every Friday, if not Saturday, just in case it comes out a little bit late. And my rankings over there at dynastynerds.com. If you join the Dynasty GM, where it'll actually help you manage some leagues, you will also get my rankings for Dynasty over there as well. Don't forget about trophysmack.com, of course, where we actually have our fun articles that are coming out. My article came out today about waiver wires to trash. You can find that over there at trophysmack.com. Top right corner says the Smack Zone. Go click on that, and all I do is trash people's takes on the waiver wire, and who to pick up. Absolutely have a blast doing that. If you guys enjoyed what I had to say tonight, I am even more visual with more details in my actual articles themselves. So go check it out over there at trophysmack.com. And while you're there, buy a trophy. If you buy a trophy or a belt and you throw a ring in your cart with the trophy or belt, you'll actually get the $60 ring for free. That's right. You'll get the $60 ring for free. So go check it out, trophysmack.com. Use promo code CIRCLE at checkout, and you will get a free ring. Thank you guys for listening, and thank you all for letting us intervene with your fantasy football life. We're out.